Okay, welcome to week 10. We're completed the sessions of week 9 and 8 in which we learned single view drawing. We learned axonometric drawing and isometric drawing. We learned metric measurement. We learned how to create orthographic views of objects. And we built on our first week's 4, 5, 6, 7, in which we measured a room and understood drafting floor plans, sections and elevations and ceiling plans. Now we're going to jump up in scale a little bit and go from the individual room into a series of rooms or a whole house. So we'll learn how to draft a whole house from a thumbnail drawing. This will involve blowing up in scale, as you may have recalled from week 2, the exercise of scale, in which we try to measure lines, and we had to bring those lines up to scale in order to measure them at scale. Oftentimes you have a drawing of a space, a room, a house, an apartment, in which the only thing you have is a reduced size drawing. It might be something like a little thumbnail sketch, a mere diagram of a plan. And what we would do is we would find a way to blow that plan up to scale so that we could actually draft it to an actual scale. And that scale might be anywhere from 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, if it's a very small property or space, even 1/2 inch to show more detail. We have to adjust the size of our scale to fit with our sheets, the purpose of the drawing. Our purpose today would just be to draw a house to scale in a manageable size paper for us. We'll be using 11 by 17 paper this time as opposed to 8.5 by 11 inch paper, which we've been using, easier to scale and scan. I think most scanners will allow a 11 by 17 sheet to be scanned, and we can reduce our floor plan scale down to 1/8 inch equals a foot, and we'll be able to get that to fit on our sheet. But we have to start with a drawing that can be scaled up relatively accurately that we can then trace over. You may remember from the handouts of week 4, we had that series of Ching drawings that showed the process of laying out a floor plan, starting very lightly with layout lines, beginning to add in a few more of the fixed elements, walls, and then windows and doors. And then we would begin to darken in those lines and add the finishing touches like dimensions and elevation references, section references, titles, and such to make the complete drawing. We'll go through that process here today. So we may start with this very small plan. In this case, it's an old historic house plan called the Garden District Chateau Plan. It's merely a thumbnail, but there are some hints as to what size this is. It has overall dimensions. They may or may not be accurate, but they're generally on the order of 36 feet wide by 42 feet deep or long. Our first stab would be to blow that up in scale, and most enlargers have a 200% enlargement, and we know it would be at least 200%. We would start by blowing that plan up to 200%. Once we did that, you might find that our new drawing looks a little bit bigger, but still not quite large enough. If we were to take a scale and measure what the 36-foot dimension might be, if we took a 16th scale, we might say, well, yeah, it's a little bit more than 16th, but that's still not big enough. We would need to make something larger. We would try blowing that up again at another 200% to double that size. So we'll give another test. And another 200%, we see a larger plan now. That's something that we can begin to scale. If we look at our 36-foot dimension here, we see we're 40 feet at 1/8 inch scale. Maybe that means, since the drawing is just about big enough to still fit on our 11 by 17 sheet, we might scale it down just a tad and try 32nd inch scale or 3/16 inch scale. Would probably fit just about right. The final calculation you would have to make would be to scale something in the scale you wanted to measure it in, and see that what we think is 36 feet actually may be the bay window to the projection of the fireplace. If we look at that, we see that scales to more like 31 feet, but we want to align that with 36 feet. So in our calculation for the enlargement, just 31 feet times your enlargement factor, which is what you'll plug into your copy machine, has to equal 36. So eventually, you've blown up your thumbnail drawing into a scale that worked for you. In our case, we'll scale it down to 3/16 inch equals a foot. It'll fit on the page just fine. And you get your plan drawn up to that scale. And then you have to trace over and fix the inaccuracies of the plan. We'll start with some basic tenets, such as exterior walls will all be 9 inches thick. Interior walls will all be 6 inches thick. And then we'll plan in our doors and windows. And once we set this up, we'll begin to establish the basic layout of the floor plan. We'll just block it in. We'll start with some basic outlines to make sure it's fitting on the page well. And we'll start that out by if we look at the completed picture and go back, we'll notice how big our plan becomes. We'll start it so that we have room for our dimensions on either side. So we have the overall dimension line, the major break dimension line, and the specific dimension line nested together to show windows and doors and such as that. Again, horizontally, you would have your major dimension line, the overall. The major breaks, in this case, will try to get all the dimensions of the interior rooms. And then inside, again, the third nested dimension line of the major breaks within the rooms itself, window openings and elements like fireplaces. So we look at where that space is. We've figured it from the layout of the traced plan. And we establish our beginning, just our first line. And if we want to make sure we are relatively centered, we establish where our left-hand wall would be. We've calculated how big the plan would be, its overall length, and then establish how much would be left on the right-hand side so that we could begin to establish starting the plan at the left. We'll do the same thing for the vertical. We'll establish how wide the house is, which leaves us with how much space we have left and which space we have to include our 3-dimension lines. It looks like it will be tight, but we can make it fit. Same thing for the space below the house on the south face here. We've got the edge of the house. Even though it has a little notch right in here, we're going to have about space enough for our 3 dimensions. And remember, we also have that chimney protrusion as well coming in right in here. So even though this is the length of the house, and that's the overall, we're going to allow for that chimney breast to appear. and get our dimension lines within that and provide our titling, house floor plan, scale, and space like that. So now that means equalizing the two, we wind up with a starting point right about here, and now we can begin to lay out our lines. That particular layout line from left to right would put us just about 21 feet in scale from the margin. And now we just check our dimensions. We'll look at our final drawing here, but this is something you would establish as you go through the enlarged plan. And we've established that the overall dimension of the house was 40 feet, plus that extra 2 feet for the projection of the bay window, made it 42 feet, which is what the width indicated of the house, or the depth they called it, the depth of the house as being 42 feet, and that goes from the bay window to the face of the house. And in terms of the 36-foot width, we established that as being the body of the house at 32 feet, with a projection of the bay window to the north at 2 more feet, and the projection of the chimney at just over 1 foot, 1'3". So it's not exactly 36, it's more like 35 feet, 3 inches. But that's how we can establish our house, and that's the point at which we will begin to draw all of our exterior walls at 9 inches thick. And we'll start it very generally with just the general rectangular space. We'll then go back in, as we did when we were measuring just the room, and add windows and doors and details. So now that we have our starting space, we'll begin to draw that in. We've got our location to start here, and we know that all of our exterior walls are 9 inches. So at 3/16 in scale, we'll start marking off our 9-inch walls. 9 inches. And then 9 inches on the north wall. And 9 inches for the south wall. Even though we know that it's not a perfect rectangle yet, we'll block it out as a perfect rectangle, and then we'll get into the particulars of the configuration of the house. So just lightly draw in our wall thicknesses. I will intersect my lines. You don't have to spend your time making sure they stop exactly at the corners, but intersecting allows you to know what your dimensions are. So I have the north, the south, the west. I'll measure in the east side also at 9 inches. And again, these are light layout lines. Anything goes wrong, it's easy to erase. We have the block. Now we'll begin to take out the major notches. In this case, we know that we are about 32 feet for the width of the house, but the main block here is 24 feet with an 8-foot block out to the west and 11-foot in. That's what it measures to. So we'll begin to scale that. 11 inches, 11 feet at 3/16 inch equals a foot. 11 feet, and then 9 inches. And then 8 feet for the notch. And then 9 inches. 8 feet and 9 inches. Intersect that, and now we will have the rough shape of the house in here. We can go and add now the configurations, the block for the fireplace, the bay window, the bay window to the east, and the block of the fireplace here. If we trace over on our original, we see that it appears to be just about 4 feet to the inside of the front wall, or in this case, the west wall. 4 feet, and we measured that, we figured that the chimney was also 6 feet, so that would be 10 feet without moving your scale. And that'll mark where the fireplace sits. We have another fireplace on the other side, which is about 4 feet 6 in from the other corner. So we'll measure that in, and it's also a 6-foot fireplace. So we'll measure that 4 feet 6, and I think the reason that the exact size is just off of symmetrical with the other one has to do with the interior spacing. These fireplaces are tending to be centered on the rooms, so we might take that as our cue to lay in our interior rooms. I'll put the two fireplaces in, and we'll see their depth is a rectangle of 3 feet by 6 feet. We'll space that onto the exterior wall so that we split the difference, leaving a 1'3" projection outside. The 9-inch wall thickness will give us a 1 foot projection to the interior of the room, which is just about right for a fireplace. So that's 1'3" for the exterior, and the whole total thickness of the fireplace is 3 feet with 1 foot to the interior. Block that in, just mark that out. And the same for the one on the southeast. Again, that's 1'3" outside. That means 9 inches for the wall, and then 3 feet altogether, meaning we have about a foot projection inside. Now, we have our three main elements. We have the beginning of the house. We have the notch taken out. We have the two major elements. The bay window elements, which we could draw in, are generally related to the interior of the rooms. So what we'll start to do now is we'll begin to lay out all the interior walls. And then once we have the interior walls, which are 6 inches thick, not 9 inches, they're generally narrower, then we'll be able to relate the bay window into the centering of the rooms. So we'll go and look at what the spaces are for these rooms. And if we remember from our blow-up, the rooms were telling us generally what these dimensions were. 14 feet by 15.8, dining room 11 feet by 14 feet, keeping room, which is the room where you keep the family together, 14 feet by 18 feet. We'll use that just as a base. You have to make them more accurate. They're not always precise, so if your dimensions vary a little bit, use your common sense to get relationships such as symmetry that you know exists in these old houses, of the fireplace and of the bay window. But we'll use that as a guide for where these walls will be, which means in the great room down here, we'll start with a 14-foot dimension and then a 6-inch wall. Now, if we do that, we'll see at a glance that that allows for symmetrical placing of that fireplace. So that seems to be a logical dimension. 14 feet for the great room, 6-inch wall. We'll just mark it off there. And then we'll look the same for the dining room. The dining room says it's 11 feet by 14, 11 feet being the narrow dimension. And if we do that, 11 foot, that means that bay window could be just about in the center with a 1 foot wall on either side. So you have a 9-foot opening for the bay window. That would make sense. So that seems to be about right. We'll mark off 11 feet, clear for the dining room, and then another 6 inches. Which when we're told, then will be just about 12 feet 6 or so for the kitchen, which is just about right. We'll just block these lines in lightly. We begin to establish our interior arrangement for these rooms now. Again, light lines. Anything goes wrong, you can always redo that. So we have the beginning of the great room, the dining room. Now we have a little foyer here on the entry, and that foyer is about 6 feet. It scales to maybe 6 feet 9 inches. We'll see how that works. That allows the great room to be just about 15 feet 3 inches. So we'll see how that works. We'll just put our dimension in there, 6 feet 9, and then 6 inches for that wall. And we see that wall carries right across. Foyer wall forms the great room wall, forms the powder room wall as well. So let's strike that across. Now we're beginning to create that space. The great room, the foyer, the dining room, kitchen, breakfast, keeping room. There's a laundry room in here that we have to get still. There's also this little space right here, which is this keeping room space. We'll look at the plan again. We'll see, where do we put the south wall of this dining room? If we look at our plan, we want to make sure we have enough space for powder room, and that 3-foot width would be just about right, and that would define the south wall of the dining room, and then create our little powder room in there. So we'll add that 3-foot space, create the powder room, finish the dining room, just blocking it out. We're beginning to see the dining, the kitchen, powder room in here. And now we have to get this little bit of the foyer, closet, laundry room, corridor. Now we know we have an intersection where the exterior walls meet the interior walls. We have to decide about an alignment. And we should see that the difference between the 6-inch wall and the 9-inch exterior wall should occur such that the interior lines up with the interior of the exterior wall. Have a straight line right here for the laundry room forming the closet, as well as for that same alignment here where the inside faces line up. So we'll extend those lines right here and then create our closet and foyer. So this line will extend into the foyer. Where it's 9 inches on the exterior, it'll become 6 inches on the interior. So we'll measure these 6 inches, and that will complete the wall for the foyer. So now we have our complete foyer with this last 6-inch wall here. Now remember, we're not doing the openings yet. We're just doing all the partition layouts. So it's 6 inches, 6 inches, but it's 9 inches, 9 inches, 9 inches, 9 inches. And this is the foyer. This is the powder room. Outside the powder room right here is a corridor. And that corridor, if we look at the space we allow, and we take that scale measurement from the rough layout, it seems that that 4-foot corridor would work just about well. That way, when we have this 3-foot opening into the corridor, the hallway off of the foyer, it's symmetrical. You have a symmetrical alignment of the opening into the corridor. So that'll give us our 4-foot dimension, which we'll take from right outside the powder room walls. We'll make it 4 feet for the width of that corridor, and we'll mark off 6 inches for the wall that defines the laundry room. Bring that line in here. At this point, you might want to erase a little bit of that overshot because you might mistake it for an actual room. And we'll just erase a little bit. That'll make it easier for you to see what these rough layouts are for these rooms. We look at that corridor wall, and it really only extends to the bathroom. So we just bring it out to about that far. We begin to see that we're making up this laundry room. It just needs the east wall. And if you look at the layout, it seems that the east wall will kind of continue to line up with the east wall of the powder room, creating an opening into the breakfast area. And we just have to determine what that dimension is. Well, if we look at it, it appears as though the dimension for that powder room could well be, it's very tiny, 3 feet wide by about maybe 6 feet 6. It could be about right. That would leave us with approximately a 10-foot wide laundry room, which could be just about right. So we'll try that 10-foot dimension as being the east position of the laundry room wall. So there is 10 feet and a 6-inch wall. Block that in. Again, lightly. Carry that through the corridor, carry that through the powder room. So we're beginning to make the series of spaces. Just blocked out in light walls right now. And we'll check our dimensions again to see whether we're close to what we should be. Seems livable. 3 foot by about 6 foot 6, just about 4 foot wide for the corridor. A laundry room, and that has a little closet nested in it. And that closet wall will probably be the continuation of this interior wall, which is the dining room's west wall. So we'll just bring that line down, and that'll become the closet width. 6 inches interior wall. And also the rear wall of that closet is an interior wall, even though it lines up with the exterior wall of the foyer. So that foyer wall is 9 inches on the exterior, but 6 inches on the interior. So we'll take that dimension, line it up with the inside, mark off 6 inches, and now we have the hallway closet. Now all these lines are beginning to come together. We have just about all the spaces. We have the great room space, the dining room space. We don't have the bay windows, but we'll put them in next now that we have these interior walls. We have our kitchen blocking out. We have our breakfast room, which will also incorporate another bay window. We have our keeping room. Now we have this little stairway here that's between the hallway and the keeping room. So we have a standard dimension, more or less, of the stairway. It seems like 3 feet is a workable dimension, so we'll scale off a 3-foot dimension for the stairway. and then a 6-inch wall. This will be a stair that has stairs that go up to the second floor. We're not going to be drawing the second floor, just the first floor, but there are stairs that go up to the second floor. And then below that, there could be a stair that goes down into the basement. We won't draw the basement, but we'll draw entry that goes down into there. But that will be 3 feet wide, and we'll just show the length of it here. We'll deal with those details as we develop them. So we just block out the space. And now we have just about all of our walls in the right place. We'll go back and add in these appurtenances, the bay windows now. And the bay window that's associated with the dining room generally would like to be symmetrical to that. So we see that we have an 11-foot wide dining room, and that'll allow us to have a 9-foot wide bay window. When we look at our plan, roughly the blown up thumbnail sketch, we see that it's very rough, but if we were to take our refined dimensions, we can see that we've got the wall, a window, the walls that come together at 45 degrees, the window on the long leg, and the window in the short leg of the bay. If we establish that this dimension was 11 feet, we're establishing this would work out to be about 9 feet, and the projection would be about 2 feet, with the consistent width of the wall being 9 inches, because it is an exterior wall after all. So we'll just lay in the bay configuration for the dining room, and we'll do the same thing for the breakfast nook. If we have 11 feet and we have a 9-foot bay, then we have 1 foot wall on either side. When we get to the breakfast bay window, we'll see that the same width applies. They're the same dimension, similar. That's good. A 9-foot opening then, and we look at the dimensions, we'll work with a 9-foot wall for the kitchen. And so we can do both of our bay windows with those dimensions accordingly. So let's lay that out on what the drawing will be like, and we'll refine it to fit in this configuration. So we have our 11-foot dimension, our 9-foot opening centered with 1 foot on either side. That 9-foot opening will replicate itself into the breakfast bay window as 9 feet. So we'll have a opening of 9 feet, and then we'll lay that into the kitchen wall, which will be a 9-foot length of wall. 9-foot opening, then we'll deal with the rest. So let's just get our bay windows in there and measure our dimensions. We're locating this in the center, 11 foot, 9 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. We're projecting out 2 feet from the face of the dining room wall, and then 9 inches because that bay window is an exterior wall. The bay windows are bending at 45 degrees. We'll use it with our trusty adjustable triangle, and you remember how that works is when it's closed, it's in a 45 degree position, 45 degrees and 45 degrees. We have the long leg and the short leg. Creating a 45 degree right leaning angle, we use the long leg against the parallel rule. We'll measure that off against where it hits the inside wall, extend a 45 degree line. For the left leaning 45 degree line, we take our adjustable triangle, we flip it around such that the hypotenuse now is against the parallel rule edge, and the long leg becomes the angle which you create the 45 left leaning line. And we'll construct that there. And now we have the 2 angled portions of the bay, and we've established that it's going in 2 feet deep from the face of the wall. So we've marked off our 2 feet, and we've marked off our 9-inch wall thickness because it's an exterior wall. So we'll connect those lines. So this is the inside face, and then we have the thickness of the wall. Now, that thickness needs to wrap its way around the bay. So both angled walls at 45 degrees will also be 9 inches thick. 9 inches here, 9 inches here, and perpendicularly it's measured 9 inches for each bay side. So we'll take our scale. We'll tick off 9 inches measured perpendicularly. That's at right angles to the 45-degree angle. 9 inches here. And we'll do the same for the west side. 9 inches there. We'll take our adjustable triangle, connect those lines, and the other side is already set up here. So in this case, we could do this short leg side for the right leaning line, and this side, the long leg for the left leaning side. So now we've roughed out our bay window, and now we'll rough out the bay window for the breakfast area. We've established that it would be a 9-foot wide bay window, and we'd start at 9 feet in from the kitchen wall. So here is our 9 feet of the kitchen wall. 9-foot opening puts us at 18 feet. And that's where the bay window goes in at 45 degrees. With our 45-degree adjustable triangle this way, we can keep the hypotenuse against the parallel edge and mark it down here, slide it to the other side for the right leaning angle, mark it over here, and then again we'll measure our 2 feet depth. So it's 2 feet in from the face of the wall, and it's 9 inches thick, the wall. And then we have our 9-inch thickness of the wall measured perpendicularly. So we lay our scale right on the angle of that exterior bay window wall, 9 inches here. And we'll do the same thing perpendicularly here, 9 inches for the second angle. We've marked that off. We can take our adjustable triangle again and complete the thickness of the bay window wall. There it's here. Slide it this way, get the other angle. It's actually quite easy using this adjustable triangle. We flip it now for the vertical. Change the leg. Here we are. And then the other thickness. So we now have the configuration of the house very lightly blocked out. The 42 by 32, and then 34, almost 36. The little notch taken out at the entry foyer into the great room, through to the dining room, into the kitchen, the breakfast area, the keeping room, the stairs, the laundry room, hallway, powder room, and closet. Now we just need to locate all of our openings. So we'll take all the exterior openings, we'll locate them, and then we'll be able to heavy up some of those lines so you can begin to evince a floor plan from this. Right now it's all layout lines, but they're roughly the figure of the house. You can see that, but nothing is too dark that you can't erase it if anything is a mistake.